Hey, what's up, guys? So in my last couple of setup videos, we set up the ET8550 and the XP15000. So in this setup video, I wanted to go with something a little bit on the cheaper end of the spectrum. So we picked up this WF2830. Now this is a refurb unit directly from Epson that cost us about $65. The first thing I'm going to do is get it out of the box and get all the tape off of it. Then I'll get the refill cartridges ready. Now, being that I want to initialize this new or factory refurbished print head with Sublimation Ink, I'm going to swap the chips from the initialization ink cartridges that came with the printer onto the refill cartridges. Now, if you're uncomfortable with removing and replacing the chips, you can always just set up the printer with the initialization ink and then swap over to the refill cartridges and the Sublimation Ink after you've installed the Chipless firmware. I follow that method in the 2850 setup video, and I'll post a link in the description if you want to go that route. So I'll start by removing the chips from the initialization cartridges and placing them onto the chip holder of the refill cartridges. To take them off, I'll just use my fingernail, and then I'll place a chip on the corresponding refill cartridge. Next, I'm going to fill the cartridges. Now I'm going to start off by removing both sets of plugs from the refill cartridges. And you can go ahead and set aside the clear plugs. We won't be using them again. You never want to print with both sets of plugs in. The ink won't flow and it can damage your print head. You always want to leave the vent hole open when you're printing. Filling up is pretty straightforward. You'll add full 10 milliliters of ink into your refill cartridge. Then you're going to prime the cartridge and then top the cartridge off. Here I'm going to be using the priming tip on my syringe, but again, I'll go over other ways of priming in the 2850 video, and that'll be linked in the description. Once we have all the cartridges filled and primed, we can start the printer setup. Again, I'm setting up a new printer, so I'm forced to do a printer initialization, but if you're working on a used printer, you just skip forward to the chipless install. So I'll continue setting this up like you would just if you followed the Start Here document up to step number 3. Now, since I'm using the refill cartridges with the initialization cartridge chips, the printer won't be able to tell the difference, and I'll just use the refill cartridges to do the initialization. If you use the chips like I did, make sure the chips are properly lined up or you're going to get errors, like I did. After the printer initialization, the printer is going to start the adjustment. It's going to start off with a nozzle check. Now, if you don't get a clean nozzle check like us, we had lines missing in our first nozzle check, you're going to be prompted to continue, and the printer's going to perform a head cleaning and perform another nozzle check. And it'll continue doing this on and on and on. Now, I say it's okay to do this once, but I found that it's actually common for the first nozzle check to have some missing lines. So if that second nozzle check is missing lines, or like in our case, the second nozzle check was actually worse than the first one, just go ahead and continue on as if the nozzle check was good. You don't want to get into the habit of doing head cleanings. We'll run a purge file later to see if we can get a clean nozzle check pattern. After completing the printer setup by following the prompts on the screen, we'll go ahead and install the Chipless firmware. Alright, so now that you got the printer set up and initialized with the Sublimation Ink, we can go ahead and install the Chipless firmware. So what you want to do is go to your browser and go to inkchip.net, and up here at this top menu, you're going to click on the word that says software. And we are going to download the firmware for the 2830. It's the printer that we're working with, so we'll go ahead and download the firmware. I'm going to save this in my desktop, and we're going to download the activation. Now, I do not run antivirus, so if you are running antivirus, make sure you disable it for the install of the Chipless firmware, because some of the files that come in the archive files might set the antivirus off as a false positive. So if you can, go ahead and disable your antivirus while you're installing the Chipless firmware. Also, when you're installing Chipless firmware, it has to be done with a USB cable. You can't do it over the network. And you also have to use a Windows PC or PC running Windows software. You can't use it. You can't use a Mac to install the firmware. However, if you install the firmware with the PC, you can then connect the Mac to it, and it'll still be chipless. The software actually, well, the firmware actually resides on the printer, not on the computer itself. So anyway, moving on. So once we got our files downloaded, let's go back to our desktop here, and here's our files. I'm going to go ahead and create a folder so we can keep everything tidied up. Let's see, 28, 30. And we'll go ahead and just move these files over here. Now I'm going to be using a program called pzip. That's my archiving software. You can download free tools such as WinRAR. What's the other one? 7-zip's a good one. WinRAR is a good one. I'll put some links in the descriptions, but again, I use pzip just because I typed in free archiving software. I think that's what I searched for. Anyways, moving on. So we'll go ahead and start with the firmware. Now, go ahead and double click this, and to install the firmware, you're going to have a USB cable. So if you don't have one, make sure you go ahead and grab one and set it to the side, but we're not going to connect it just yet. So once we double click that file, we're going to go ahead and extract it. Then it's going to extract it all into this folder here. And then we're going to go ahead and double click that folder and run this inkchip.net firmware. So we'll go ahead and double click that. We'll go ahead and click yes here. And we're going to next through these. Agree here. Hit next. All right. So if you look right now, it doesn't have any connection here at all because I don't have the USB cable connected. So I'm gonna go ahead and connect that USB cable now. Okay, I went ahead and connected the USB cable. So we'll go ahead and select this one here, or make sure that it's checked here. And then you'll just go ahead and click start. It's going to ask you to proceed with firmware. You're going to click on yes. And we're going to go ahead and let it update the firmware. And off camera, what's happening is the printer's going through a firmware update mode, and you'll see the screen change. Okay, so what happened is the firmware will get to 99% here and tell you that it's failed. It actually went through okay. As long as the printer restarted, it updated the firmware. So just go ahead and click on next, and then click on finish. And then what we're gonna do next is go back to our activation and then run it. All right, so we're gonna open this activation. I'm gonna double click it. Now, if you get this screen here, what you're gonna do is click on more info here, and then you're gonna click on run anyway. And what's gonna happen is the activation tools will update itself and then determine if you have the latest version or not. This happens to be the latest version. And if you look here on this drop down menu, you'll see USB 003. It might say something different on yours, but as long as it says USB and the printer here, then you should be good to go. So what you want to do is get your activation code. To get the activation code, you can go to INKCHIP, back to inkchip.net, and you can click on go to buy up here in the corner, and we're going to be downloading we're going to be buying an activation code for Workforce Series 2830. So we'll add that to the cart. We'll click on the cart, And then we're going to proceed to check out. Now, before we check out, though, we're going to type in the code Gorilla and apply that coupon. And then it'll take off 10%. In this case, it's $3. So we'll go ahead and proceed to check out. And then we'll put in our information however you want to pay. And they will email you a activation code. So once they email you the activation code, you're going to copy the activation code, and then you're going to click on Activate Online, and then we're going to paste in that code that we received from inkchip.net in our email, and then we'll click OK. What's going to happen offline is the printer turns off, and then back on, the chipless firmware should be permanently written to the printer, and then we should be good to go. And then we can install our printer driver, and we should be good to go to start printing sublimation. Alright, now if the printer didn't restart by itself, go ahead and turn it off and turn it back on manually. That should write the firmware permanently. But I think with the new activation, it does it automatically some kind of way. So you should be good to go right after you hit activate. It should do it automatically. But if it doesn't, just manually turn it off, turn it back on, and you should be good to go. Okay, so now that we have the chipless firmware installed on the printer, we can go ahead and install the printer driver. So what we want to do is go to Epson.com, and in the search menu, we're going to type in our printer model number. In our case, it's a 2830. It's going to auto-populate here. You're just going to, either one of these, just push support or click on support link. And then from here, you can download the drivers and utility combo package installer. I'm just going to do the drivers and just going to do the printer driver. I don't plan on using any of the other functions on the printer. So go ahead and save that to our 2830 folder here. So now we go back to our desktop. We can go to our 2830 folder, and the file for the printer driver is here. So we'll go ahead and double click it. And I'm not going to set this up as my default printer, and I do not want it to automatically update the software. So what we'll do is we'll uncheck both of these and click OK. We'll click on English. I'll click agree here. Okay. Okay, it looks like the setup is complete, so I'll go ahead and click OK here. And now it should be an icon down here indicating that you have the 2830 driver installed on your computer. You just go ahead and go to printer settings. And this is when I'm going to set up the profile. Now, I normally print with a sub legal size paper to 8.5 by 14. So I'll go there to legal, normally in landscape. And I usually use premium presentation matte. Quality high. This is going to be a color profile. And then in the more options tab, I'm going to uncheck bidirectional printing and check mirror image. Here in color correction, I'm going to click on custom. Now, these are the settings that I use, and I use these settings ever since I was using other ink other than my own. So this setting actually works with other inks as well, but it looks really good with Dynamite Gorilla Sublimation Ink. So we'll go with advanced here. And then I'll go to color controls. I'm going to keep with the Epson Vivid color mode. We'll click on slide bar, and I like my colors with this setting here, with this 2 for the cyan, -20 for the magenta, and -15 for the yellow. Some people like to bump the saturation all the way up here. I like mine to start here at 0, and I use this kind of as a starting point, and then I'll adjust the colors up or down, or adjust these levels up or down as I see fit, to get the image to look like the picture on the screen, as close to my eye as possible. But that's another video. So we'll click OK here. And in maintenance, what I like to do is I'll go to extended settings, and I'll uncheck this enable Epson status monitor 3. I just don't need it popping up when I print anything. So I'll click on OK here. And then I'll go back to more options, and I'm going to type or click on add remove presets, and we're going to give this a name. And pick an icon here. We'll go with this one. And then I'll put the values here in this I'll put the values here in this comment section. So let's see, magenta. And then we'll go ahead and save this. And then now anytime I want to print, I'll go ahead and print from using this the setting here. So we can close out, and we'll click on this setting, and that'll be the default setting for the printer going forward. So now we can go ahead and open up Photoshop, and then we'll print a purge file, and then we'll go ahead and print something out to press. Okay, so I went ahead and printed that purge file out, and the reason why is because when we initially set up the printer, it had those breaks in the nozzle check. So I went ahead and printed out a purge file, and that's just going to help push the colors through the print head and get any air that might be trapped in the print head out. So once we did that, we went ahead and printed out another nozzle check, and it came out clean. So we can go ahead and start printing at this point. Now I just got a order in from a customer that's seen some of the license plates that was featured in one of my TikTok videos. So if you haven't checked that out, check me out on TikTok at Dynamite Gorilla. So let's go ahead and get him started here. Go ahead and open my recents. This blue tighten up here. Now he's going to be doing I think Bedford County. So let's go ahead and change this. Alright, and we're going to use that profile that we just set up. So 2830 series right here, and it's already set up for the profile, but I'm going to go ahead and just double check it. So I'm going to click on print settings, and we'll go ahead and highlight this setting that we created earlier. We'll click OK, and he wants 2 of these, so we'll print this one, and we'll come right behind that one and print another one. Alright, so it looks like we got another order in, so we'll go ahead and get that one up too. That one's a black and white, so we'll make another profile and get that one printed out as well. Go to 2830. We're going to use the same profile. We're just going to turn it to a black and white or a grayscale, and then we're going to save it. And now I have a black and white profile. So in case I have black and white photos or black and white prints that I want to use, it's not going to use any color channels. So it'll only use the black channel. So I'll go there. And then we'll print this one off as well. Alright guys, that's going to conclude the video. Looks like the license plates and the sign turned out very well. I'm going to put a link in the description for my TikTok channel and for the products that I use in the video. Again, thanks for checking out the channel. I appreciate all of your support. And until next time, good luck and good night.